Urban explorers, what's your scariest experience? Not an urban explorer, but did geocache a lot. The app like a scavenger hunt where you explore locations to find caches with small prizes. My friend and I had avoided visiting a nearby cache down by the creek because it was hard to reach. The cache was inside a large, long concrete underpass, and the creek trails end there. The path is full of thorny vines and dead trees. The next cache was about 7 miles away though, so one weekend we just wore jeans and thick gloves and went for it. Took forever to wade through thorns and trees. Felt like I would walk into a cobweb with giant spiders any second. We made it to the underpass, and it was unremarkable. Lots of old graffiti and dripping wet concrete. Shuffled through rocks and dead leaves at the bottom of tree trunks to find the cache. No luck. Opened up the map again on my phone to confirm we were in the right spot when I heard laughter. It was a high-pitched giggle, which turned into unhinged, uncontrolled laughing. The laughter echoed and reverberated because it came from inside the underpass. We exchanged a look and didn't know what to do. The underpass was a giant concrete structure that curved around the creek, so we couldn't see all the way in. We slowly started moving back through the path we came, and the hair stood on the back of my neck the entire time. It took about 5 minutes to get out of there onto the familiar path again, but those minutes felt like hours. I kept expecting to feel a cold hand clamp down on my shoulder and drag me backwards. There was an old feed mill near my house when I was a kid. It was an 11-story tall concrete tower on a large plot of land, with a rusted fence around it. It looked like a castle. Everyone's parents told them to never go there, which to kids is of course a challenge. In the beginning, I jumped the fence a few times, and then couldn't resist trying to get into the actual building. The lock was massive but old, and eventually I managed to get it off. The inside was pitch black, so I got a few friends to go back with me. All of us had flashlights. We went up the stairs. What we thought would be cool would be to get onto the roof and maybe plant a flag up there or something. As we climbed the dark stairs, we noticed a certain humming noise. It grew louder as we went up. And then the first of us got stung, and we realized the horrible mistake we had made and ran like mad from the now very angry swarm of hornets that had built a nest a good 10 feet long in this abandoned concrete building. We were all stung a few dozen times, and it was really painful. My father just laughed and said I'd better listen next time. Told the story before. There's a church surrounded by trees, long abandoned. It is across from a cemetery that is kind of elevated, so we could see the steeple, otherwise we would have no idea it was there. Decide to check it out, but the brush and trees are so dense we have to do this kind of spiral to get to the building. We find it, and it has been boarded up, but there's a side window board, huge window, nearly reaches the ground, and the board has fallen and the glass is broken, easy access. Inside it is a church. Pews are all knocked over on one side but not the other. It smells oddly like potatoes. The backside, where there are presumably rooms and such, so we go that way. Turn the corner, and at the end of the short hallway there's a pile of fabric with ribs and long bones sticking up from under the fabric. Great, we found a body. Knowing better than to walk up any closer, we quickly leave. I look up the non-emergency number and call the police. I then get in an argument with the dispatcher. She wants me to call 911. I tell her it's bones, not an emergency. We go round and round. Finally, I hang up and call 911. Same goddamn dispatcher answers. I even snapped at her. Seriously? Cop shows up pretty quick, like 15 minutes. A rural area, so odds are there's not much going on. He never questions why we were there or what we were doing, which was pretty cool of him. He looks down the hallway and talks back and forth on his radio. We were made to stand by the broken window. Finally, he comes back. It's a deer, a little one. Looks like it busted in, got tangled in the curtains, and died. He even said it had him going until he got close. He wasn't mad and told us he would rather go on 100 false alarms than to miss a real one. Not sure if this counts precisely, but someone may find it interesting. A couple of years ago, some friends and I went up to an old military base that had been abandoned. By base, I mean 3 buildings, the main building on the far left, the men's barracks in the middle, and the women's barracks on the right, maybe an eighth the size of the men's. We weren't there for urban exploring, we were there for ghost hunting. Had a chicken shit, superstitious friend who convinced us it was haunted, and we all like ghosts, so we went. First time we went, the biggest experience I wasn't present for, but the 2 who were swear by its authenticity. We had a little audio recorder with us, and we forgot it in the women's barracks. Me and chicken shit friend go to get the car, while the other 2 go to get the recorder. When we meet back up, they're white as sheets. Apparently, when they were ducking back out of the broken window with the recorder, something inside let loose a blood-curdling scream. They described it as incoherent rage. They didn't stop to investigate. The next time we went, the women's barracks was gone. The property had been purchased and they were demolishing it. So we snuck in for a go at the men's before it went down. Pretty boring as I recall. Borrowed an FLIR camera from a friend, which we got some neat/creepy pictures with. For me personally, this was the coup de grace. We're outside the building, walking parallel to it as we're leaving. I'm flicking my light casually across the side of the building and peering in the windows. Toward the front of the building, I glance up towards the 3rd floor. This I can still picture clear as fucking day. There's a man, skin chalk white, wearing a dark blue uniform sitting in the windowsill, his back to me. He was sitting unnaturally still. Then he turned and glanced over his left shoulder at me. I could tell because I could suddenly see the bill of his hat and the ridge of his nose. Looking back, I can't remember him actually turning. He was just suddenly looking at me, minus the abruptness that implies. After maybe a full second or 2, my vision got sort of blurry. It's hard to explain. It's like when you try to see in the morning when you still have sleep in your eyes. Blinked a few times, and he was gone. Turned to a friend, and he said he'd seen a bit of him before he disappeared. Shit gives me goosebumps just writing it. Edit. Fun story about the main building, the only one I never entered. One of the guys who I went with managed to find a way in through a broken window. He and whoever he was with explored for a bit, but then they came to a big open room. It's got an honest-to-fucking-God pentagram spray painting on the floor. Satanic imagery everywhere on the walls. They're frozen when a guy wearing a long black robe walks into the room. He's as surprised to see them as they him. Turns out he and a friend were doing a Satanist photo shoot for some magazine or other, and they'd stepped out for a smoke. They ended up sticking around and helping with the photos, I think. Good times. I was hiking through the Dolomites in the Italian Alps. It was the last week of September, and the tourist season was coming to a close. I finished my 4th day of hiking with a beer at an empty hotel. The staff were focused on closing, but nice enough to recommend a place where I could pitch my tent, an abandoned hotel about 2 kilometers down the mountain pass. No camping in most of the Dolomites. I zigzagged down the road to a clearly abandoned building that was once a modest chalet on a nice plot of flattish ground. The air was getting cold and thick with fog. Before dark set in, I couldn't resist exploring, easily crawling through a broken window into a rotting bar, still with plastic Christmas and New Year's decorations. The place was pretty ruined, standard graffiti and vandalism on the main floor, but in the basement I found a painting by a child in a plastic frame. Symmetrical ellipses of all colors met along the center of the page in a football shape. Maybe the kid was thinking of a rainbow over a calm lake, but it looked like a colorful eye. I stepped into the main hall and heard running water from one of the rooms. Shit, someone's here? How have they not shut off the water to this place? I had to make a decision, and curiosity overcame fear. The room was dark. I could tell water was pouring onto the ground just inside. Headlamp on, I now swung the door open onto a busted well/sump system, spraying the walls from a broken pipe before the water poured into the ground. Sometimes nothing or nobody is worse than something. I walked back up the pass, now in a dense fog. At the top, beside where the hotel should be, there was a bonfire, which was reassuring, until I came upon ashes of paperwork and no people. Me and a few friends slipped through a hole in the fence of the haunted house that every little town has. Legend went that the big mining boss lived there, went crazy, and killed his family. I researched it, but came up with nothing. Just after midnight, we creep in, go around the back to find it's not one house, but kind of like a little courtyard with smaller buildings surrounding it. Look through a broken window, and it looked like someone had started renovations not long ago. A plaster kit in the floor, white paint on the walls, and a fluorescent light installed. The rest of the place was old, maybe 1930s, rotted brick, flaking paint, and boarded up windows for context. We saw another broken window across the yard and shined a light at it to see huge scorch/burn marks across the outside wall. Walk to the broken window, and it's a completely opposite of the first room. Smashed windows, shadows across the walls, ceiling, and strange lumpy shapes on the floor, as if the place was ransacked. Shone a light in briefly, and the light holder pulled away instantly and said, "Fuck this, I'm leaving." We all saw the burnt room, splattered with what looked like dried blood everywhere, upturned old furniture with the words, "They didn't catch me," or something similarly foreboding, scratched across the wall. We decided to leave and just chilled out at an abandoned train yard and drank until we got too cold and went home.